congressional report on the origins of the coronavirus. It shows the Wuhan lab was moving forward with major safety renovations in the time leading up to the pandemic. Rich Edson has more from the State Department. Good morning, Rich.
Yeah, good morning, Dana. And this is from the most comprehensive report yet, laying out the case for the possibility that COVID-19 began in a research lab in Wuhan. Congressional investigators for the Republican minority on the House Foreign Affairs Committee say their research leads them to conclude that, quote, the preponderance of evidence suggests SARS-CoV-2 was accidentally released from a Wuhan Institute of Virology laboratory sometime prior to September 12th, 2019. These investigators found that in the months before the start of the pandemic, the Wuhan National Biosafety Lab requested bids for major renovations to air safety and waste treatment systems in research facilities that had only been operational for less than 2 years. It's unclear why the Chinese government requested the projects or when or if they even initiated any of the work, though it's just another circumstantial element to the controversial argument that this pandemic began in a lab. This report is only weeks ahead of when the Biden administration has asked the intelligence community to report on whether the virus leaked from a lab or developed naturally. Pointing to that investigation, Democrats have refused to participate in congressional inquiries. Republican staff used project announcements published on the Chinese government's procurement website, along with other open source data, interviews with former administration officials, and scientists and research papers. Satellite images of Wuhan in September and October of 2019 showed a significant increase in hospital visits. Also, a Chinese scientist told the publication that a patient had fallen ill in September of 2019 and 2 more in mid-November. Then he requested the publication withhold that information. This report also points to suspicious information and behavior from the Chinese government and a propaganda campaign that began shortly during the pandemic and has continued through this day. Back to you, David.
Interesting stuff. Thank you, Rich. Appreciate it.
I want to bring in the lawmaker leading that investigation, Texas Republican Michael McCall. Sir, thank you for your time. Got a few specific questions here. Let's rattle through them. Based on this investigation here, are you comfortable saying this was a lab leak or was it done with intent?
We think it's likely accidental. However, all the evidence that came forward with respect to the September timeframe, as your commentary mentioned about the remediation equipment at the lab, we also had the CDC director and the Wuhan lab director voice concerns about the lab itself and the safety protocols not being followed. In addition, in September, the lab took their database offline in the middle of the night. This would be their genetic sequencing database offline, which shows that they're trying to hide or cover up something they're very concerned about at that time. We also know that the World Military Games took place in October, and about 9,000 athletes came in, many returning with flu-like symptoms. We have a satellite technology that we've seen that leads us to believe that in September, there's a lot of activity at the hospitals. And remember, the Wuhan lab is right in the middle of all this.
Okay, got it. Okay, answer on that. September 12th. That seems to be considerably sooner than we have been led to believe before. Why?
Very much so. I think they were involved in a cover-up. It's the greatest cover-up in human history. I think the Chinese Communist Party are very concerned about this report coming out, telling the truth, and it's already been interpreted into Mandarin, as well. There are just so many points, key points that have come into the process, since that time. And then, of course, by December, it's in full blown, and then in January. The fact of the matter is they were playing with fire. They were genetically manipulating at the lab this gain of function that was taking place. This Dr. Shi, the bat lady, working with Peter Daszak, to get lab samples from the caves 1,000 miles away, bat samples, and then genetically modify them into a super SARS-like virus, highly deadly, highly contagious, and unfortunately highly effective. We believe is exactly what COVID-19 was.
Wow, here is Mike Pompeo from this weekend. Watch.
We know what happened to Wuhan. We know how many people were killed in Wuhan at the front end of this thing. And we know what the Chinese Communist Party did to the rest of the world. For that alone, for that cover-up alone, and the transmission of this virus around the world, real costs have to be imposed on the Chinese Communist Party.
But that Communist Party is never going to allow the world to get an answer, will it?
No. No, I don't think so. And the databases that were taken offline that are archived, that would be the smoking gun, and I don't think they'll ever let us, have access to that. But again, going back to this very dangerous research taking place, genetically modifying viruses to create a vaccine, and then with very poor safety conditions at BSL-2 and 3 labs when they should have been at BSL-4. All these lead roads point to the lab being the source, and I believe that Peter Daszak needs to testify before Congress about what was going on. And I also think we need to sanction these top researchers that are responsible for this great pandemic that's killed over 4 million people and caused $10 trillion in economic devastation.
Last question. What are Democrats in Congress doing? What is President Biden doing to help in that effort?
Well, not much. I mean, I chaired the China Task Force. They wouldn't participate. I've asked, the Foreign Affairs Committee to subpoena witnesses. They don't seem to really, Bill, have much of an appetite for this. And for the life of me, I don't understand why. It's very important that this be bipartisan. It is an American issue. And I think if we're going to talk about commissions, for God's sakes, something like this, we should have a bipartisan commission to get to the bottom of it.
Okay. Michael McCall, thank you for sharing information today, and we'll follow it from here, wherever that leads. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you, Bill.